Hello world of YouTube and welcome to part 2 of my Blink-182 Discography review. If you're just now joining me in part 2 and you did not check out part 1, the 90s, where I talked about their demo album Buddha, their album Cheshire Cat, their EP They Came to Conquer Uranus, and their albums Dude Ranch and Enema of the State, click the door fedora. It's a magical fedora, it takes you to magical places. Yes, I know it's not on the door anymore, but that thing's name is never going to change. It's the door fedora. You don't fuck with the door fedora. Anyway, this is part 2. The 2000s, where they only put out 3 releases, or 2000/2010s, but still, they put out 3 albums in this part. They put out, or that I'm going to talk about in this part, the albums Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, their self-titled release, and their album Neighborhoods, which came out last year, and it was a honorable mention on my Albums of the Year list, so needless to say, I do quite enjoy that album. And to kind of completely sum up Blink's sound in this part that they kind of go for, they experiment a lot more in becoming more mature, and they try to delve into different realms and add new elements to the music itself. They try to focus more on being poppier and less punkier, but they do still have elements of certain songs, of albums, that have that punk edge to it still. But anyway, why don't we go ahead and get this shit started? Shall we? We shall! Now, I realize they put out an album back in 2000, a live album called The Mark, Tom, and Travis Show, but I don't normally discuss live albums on this unless they reinterpret the band's sound, so I'm not going to talk about that, even though there was a studio track on there that I do enjoy that is on my iPod. I'm not going to talk about the live album. This is the first album they released in the 2000s called Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, which was released back in 2001, and this is honestly my favorite Blink-182 album. It has a great mix of the pop and the punk side. You have tracks like First Date and Happy Holidays You Bastard, which are more edgier tracks, and tracks like Stay Together for the Kids and Story of a Lonely Guy, which are mid-tempoed for the most part, and have a lot more of the softer side to Blink, and they're still trying to stay more mature while having the songs like First Date that are still kind of immature. However, a majority of this album is still trying to push for that maturity. They haven't completely tried to change their sound like they do on the next release. Not completely change, but completely mature their sound like they do on the next release. I really dig the vibe of this album, and it kind of seems like Enema of the State Part 2, almost. It has a lot of the same elements sonically as that album. Similar styles in the bass lines, the guitar lines, and the drum work, but I do enjoy this album quite a bit. I think that it's a fantastic follow-up, and it's not the last great Blink album. Some may say that. I don't think so, because they do have elements like this that do push the sound forward. This breakdown in the track Roller Coaster. So it does have those elements that do change the sound, and it is still a great release. But yeah, I quite enjoyed this album quite a bit. It has everything I'm looking for in a Blink album, for the most part. It's got just some comedy, some snotty stories, some great emotional tracks that don't make me want to kill myself, and make me kind of want to tone things down a bit. And it's just got solid instrumentation. I really enjoyed this release. My favorite track is probably Happy Holidays You Bastard, either that or Anthem Part 2, because I really like the opening of this album. It's really good. Even though it kind of seems kind of Jesus-y, kind of like Christian rocky, I still dig it. I guess I'd say good job to Blink-182 for making a good follow-up. But anyway, let's talk about their last album for a while, shall we? Now, the next thing they released was a self-titled album that was released back in 2003, and this is actually the last thing they did for a while. And this album's a bit different for them, and honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of this release. It's got, you know, they incorporated some pianos on this album, they really kind of just tried to, mellow out their sound, but really go for this kind of, like, the punk moments they threw in aren't bad, but I mean, overall, it's very odd. This album, you have Tom DeLonge's vocals kind of go for this more overly dramatic side, where he's kind of being extremely melodramatic on how he delivers, like on Feeling This. He just seems very, oh my god, is the best way to describe just kind of that style of how he delivers. And I'm not too keen on it. It's one of my biggest complaints about the next album, because he does it on 10 on that release, but everything kind of seems pulled back on some moments. There are small slivers of good instrumentation, but I mean, it's fairly different for them. And while I respect experimentation, I respect them for making this release, it didn't completely hit with me. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not terrible. They had an interesting feature on here with Robert Smith of The Cure, which, I mean, considering the tones of the album, it's not surprising, but if you said Blink-182 did a song with Robert Smith, that would blow the minds of people listening to their music back in 2000, or just back in 2000. This album really kind of seemed like just a melancholy note for the band as a whole, and it kind of reflected the fact that they broke up not too long later. This is probably actually my favorite song, Go. It's a nice sliver of an adapted Blink sound, but it's not terrible. But either that or Always, because Always is another really good track on here. But yeah, I mean, this album isn't bad per se. It's just fairly different for them. One of the most interesting tracks to me on here is I Miss You, the really popular ballad, because it's instrumentally different for them. It's got, like, it seems very toned down, and it's kind of a good way to represent the album. Toned down, but having small elements or small tracks dedicated to the old Blink sound. Instrumentally, like, it's not terrible, but it's not the best thing they've done. The drums are still solid. The bass lines, some of them are still really catchy. The guitar work is alright. Aside from Tong's starting to become overdramatic vocals, I don't mind Mark's vocals, but yeah. If you like this album, you like this album. If you want to hear Blink a lot more mature sounding, get this release. I know some people out there, this is one of the favorite Blink releases, but it's not mine. Yeah, let's wrap this review up, I guess, shall we? Because I don't have too much else to say on this album. My favorite song is Go. Probably either Go or Always. I'll link both in the under thingy. But let's talk about Neighborhoods, shall we? Now, the next thing they released was called Neighborhoods, and it was released last year, and this album was interesting to listen to the first time I heard it. While it was one of my honorable mentions of last year, because I really did enjoy elements of this release, there were some elements that really brought this album down, and the biggest one is Tom DeLonge's vocals. Mark Hoppus sounds great on this release. The guitars don't sound terrible, and the drums are fantastic. Travis and Mark are probably the best elements of this album, which is why my favorite track is It's All Gone. But I don't mind the addition of the keyboards, like the over addition of a lot of the swelling keyboard sounds. I don't mind tracks like Kaleidoscope that are fairly familiar but different for them. Really, my least favorite track on here is Love is Dangerous, because it's a lot of Tom, and it sounds very just like space Blink. But the choruses on this thing are great. The drum work is, like I said, fantastic. Like, the opening to Up All Night is so damn good. I love the opening to that track. Like, that drum line in the opening is fantastic. Yeah, I mean, this album isn't terrible. It's a good return for them. I'd like to see them expand on the sound, but bring back Tom a bit, especially his vocals. Make him less overdramatic and not as emoting or not really as much emoting as should be happening on a Blink album. But instrumentally, they're pretty much there. They pretty much got everything good instrumentally. The punkier moments are really refreshing to hear, and it was a good album from last year. Again, wasn't my favorite, but wasn't my least favorite. My favorite track is, like I said, Heart's All Gone, and really, this album, I mean, it's It's also refreshing to hear Blink do stuff kind of like on the last release that's lengthier. You get to hear them expand a song. You get to hear them expand an idea. And I really enjoyed that on this album. And this was just a really refreshing album to hear last year. It kind of made me feel pseudo-nostalgic, and it was good. It was a good album. I'd highly suggest it. And it's probably tied for my third favorite Blink-182 album with Enema of the State. I really enjoyed this record a lot, aside from Tom's vocals, which are the majority on this album, but, I mean, even the more I listen to it, his vocals don't get, they grow on me a little bit, but at first, listening to the album every time, after not hearing it for a while, I just kind of cringe a bit, because he just sounds really just weird. But, yeah, I like this album, and I do enjoy this band quite a bit. I know I seem like I kind of breezed past some of their releases, but it's not terrible. This band is actually very good, at least to me. I think I really enjoy Blink-182. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this review. The next one I'm doing is the Beastie Boys in tribute to MCA, who passed recently. I'm going to be doing Beastie Boys, which will be great, because I love the Beastie Boys. But, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I wanted to say for Blink. Again, hopefully you enjoyed this review. As always, my favorite songs are linked in the under thingy, along with a bunch of other nifty links. I have been Viralrak. You guys have good days, lots of situations, and I will see you another day. I can't wait for new Blink. I'm stoked for new Blink-182. It's gonna be good.